welcome to my channel. I'm Ellie Jńe. So today we are going to be making a Mother's Day card, and I started off with a 12x6 base, and we're getting right into it because there's quite a few steps. But this card can be used for any type of holiday sentiment or whatever you need. So what you see me doing here is taking the top flap of the card and cutting them down two ways, the same size, 12x6, and I'm just basically taking that flap or that cutout and just putting it to the side. I'm going to show you how it fits together, but you want to make sure that top flap is cut off by 2 inches, and you'll see why it's important or why it's needed. Now, it does not have to be these exact cuts. One could be fatter than the other, but you want to make sure that these two, the top flap is actually cut out. So mine are even strips, so you can kind of see the gist of this project. And I also cut out a 4.5 by 5.5 cardstock, just basic plain white cardstock, so you can be able to write your printout, your sentiment, or do your stamps. Also, I did cut out 3 1 3/4 by 4 1/2 strips in different cardstock colors. Again, you can use the same color, but just make sure that it not only has dimension but has color, or if you want to use stamps or anything, if you're going to be using the same cardstock as your base, please know that, you know, it's creative. You can do whatever you want to do, and it would really work out with this project. And every piece that I have and put together, I'm taking the time out to distress the edges of the card. And I'm doing that not only for the strips, I'm going to be doing that for the base of the card, the front, back, creases, edges, everything, because I like dimension on my cards, but you know, there's many ways to create dimension, right? So you can either stack the card up to make it thick or get a thicker cardstock. You can also just distress like what I'm doing. So there's many ways to create that dimension that you need to give that card a pop. And I feel like distressing is the best way to give a card a pop. And you kind of get this distressing method a little bit from the junk journal crafting side of things, and a little bit from the inking side of the house, a crafting house, but nonetheless, it's still applicable for a card. So also, get creative with your inking. I did black here simply because I know the person that I'm making this card for, so they like to keep things simple, but a red would have worked, a navy blue would have worked very nicely. So I'm taking my strips of cardstock or colored cardstock and placing it down on my top flap, and then I'm distressing the 2x6 inch flaps that I cut off from my top flap. And I'm going to also be placing the other 2 cut out cardstocks that I'm putting on top here, and I'm centering it from the middle and the top and making sure that it's right in the middle. Again, it can be tilted. I don't have it perfect, you know, I eyeballed it, but if you want it to be perfect, make sure that you measure out both sides, the height and the width, and it'll turn out perfectly. I liked a little bit of the tilt on there because it gives that handmade feel, but if it turns out really straight, even better. I used a lot of tape, a double-sided tape, for this project to start off, simply because these are just standard pieces of paper. Glue is not necessary here because it doesn't have to be straight for me. But if you know that you like to move and wiggle things around, definitely use glue. Me, I'm just like, wherever it falls, that's where it is. Enjoy. But you can see in the top card that I just finished up above the one that I'm about to stick, that one is a little bit tilted, but it still looks fine. So when you see the end product, you're definitely going to see, okay, it's really not that big of a deal. And this one came out a little bit straighter, maybe. So yeah, it did. All right, so I distressed all of the inside of the card. Again, this could be left blank. I distressed it because I do want that little worn look. It could also look good with like a brown walnut, especially with the type of cardstock colors I used. And the type of paper I used is from Recollections, and it's their autumn book, and I have those details down below. But y'all, I really love this look, and you can spruce it up with some beautiful colors. You can use a white base instead of my green base card. You can do blue. You can do all different types of colors. You can make it kitty. It's awesome. So I'm basically stacking the card up on how it would look in the end. But before I even assemble the card, I need to get my stamping done. At this point, I'm just going to preface it by saying I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what I wanted to use. So I just basically took my stamps that I liked and went to town. I utilized the colors brown, red, and black, and it did not work out, but we're still going to talk about like what I did and why I did it and why it could work in other crafty spaces and what I did to actually fix it. So I'm using this Tim Holtz Distressing Ink Walnut, and the reason why I use this brown is because I did want it to look like the fields are like deep and we're not looking at just one thing close at us. So I wanted to give it some dimension, so I used a dark but a lighter stamp, and then I used this second stamp and made it red, and I just wanted a pop of color because we use so much brown with our design. So I was like, okay, a red would be an even tone pop of color, but it's not, you know, overly aggressive in its tone. It just, I think it sat well with the color palette, honestly. Then I noticed that the card looked a little bit, you know, spacey, just wasn't giving for me. So I found a third stamp that went with my cards, and these stamps are all on Amazon, and I have the information down below. And I'd used black, and I thought black would actually pop the colors forward, but as you can see, that was kind of like a medley of stamps, and I like that print, but not for this card. So I knew I needed dimension. I knew I needed something, so I started playing around like I totally encourage you guys to do, and use Verse ink, embossing ink, and I was like, what if I put some gold in there? And a couple cool things happened. For one, that shimmer was absolutely beautiful with this color palette of stamps. Also, I had wet ink from the black ink, so it stuck to more than what I intended for it to stick to, the actual ink. Also, I did not use what do you call those, the static pouch. Don't know why. I should have, but I didn't, and it worked out perfectly for me. So if you're willing to take the risk, take the risk. Also, whenever you do heat, we know through Jennifer McGuire and all of the other great influencers that you want to heat emboss on the front and the back of your card, so there won't be any warping. I don't mind the warping. Again, it makes my card feel handmade. But if you do not care for that, please heat up the card on both sides. So as you see here, I am not feeling the gold as the dimension. It needs a little bit more, and I checked my window just to make sure, you know, like what can I do? And I was just like a little stumped, and I ended up really thinking like, okay, how do I add dimension? How do I make this pop? And I gave myself a break and started stamping. I did not make the sentiment perfect here because it's a Mother's Day card, so I still wanted to put that like childlike element of like spacing the letters out and making them go up and down. And I'm still thinking about the card below. Let me not give too much space, you know, take too much space away because I might need it. But for the most part, I was like, let me put the sentiment in there before I lose the space. And I wanted to put a feather on the front of the card as well, while I was still thinking about the inside of the card, and I used that walnut and lightly distressed the white cardstock that I cut out with a die cut. I also cut out another die cut that was gold, and you'll see that in a little bit. And as I assemble this card, which in turn helped me better see what I wanted to do with the card, I assembled the card basically with the strip going on the bottom, and I put a strip on the top. So as you can see, I just basically flipped that middle piece and put it on top of the card and taped it on there. And you can glue it, of course, but tape allows you to kind of get to the point. And you can scooch the middle part to the middle top piece to the left, or you can scooch it all the way to the right or the left, or the middle. You could do whatever, but this adds beautiful layers. And then once I assembled the little decor on the front of my card with the feathers, I just did the feathers according to what I think made sense for my storyline of this card. I added twine and added this bow that has no real reason why I put it there other than it was cute, and that's the whole point of a card. But it just the twine went really well with the card, and I felt like it needed a really earthy element. So anyway, I ended up resulting to really cutting out a lot of die cuts, and I cut it out on white cardstock paper, thick paper, and brought out my markers and started coloring these different floral pieces. And what I loved about it is I got to play with the colors I wanted to, and not what the cardstock recollections type of stash that I had. I didn't have to go out and buy anything new when I cut out these pieces. I used the colors I wanted. I colored them thick in other areas. I used different colors, and as you can see, all of these floral colors that I colored, I used some orange, I used some pink, and when I was done, I just assembled them, and then you see me gluing it down the way that I want it to be glued down. I'm using a glue pen this time instead of tape, because I do not want to see the tape behind each die cut. And I just started playing around, and it ended up becoming beautiful. And as you can see, the stamp in the back really made it look like there was depth to the picture. Like I almost took the picture from the ground, looking through like grass or whatever the scenery is. And I just basically layered these die cuts together, and this came out so gorgeous. So yeah, I'm Ellie Jńe, I'm your space curator, and today I made a craft Mother's Day card. If you have any questions, comments, please comment below, subscribe, like, and share, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.